All right, so we've got our basic paddle movement up and down, and we've got our ball able to bounce. Now, I want to get into the coding of more specific bouncing. And what that includes is bouncing up when we hit the top of the paddle and bouncing down when we hit the bottom of the paddle. Now, we're going to do some math here in a second, which includes us to do something where if we hit the top, it returns a number 1. If we hit the middle, it returns a 0. If we hit the middle here, it'll be 0.5. And then the same thing down here, except it'll be a negative 0.5 because we want the ball to go down. And then down here, it'll return a negative 1. And we'll do that on both sides. And then we'll get a range of anywhere between 0 and 1 from here to here, and 0 and negative 1 to here. And we're all going to do that through the math of position of the paddle versus the ball and the size of the paddle. So with our ball script, we're going to start using another built-in function that Unity contains, which is the collision method. So just below the update method, which we aren't really going to use, and we could delete if we want to. But I'm going to use this void on collision enter 2D. And then I put in parentheses here, collision 2D, and then say something like obj. Now, what this method does is when we first collide with something, or when we first enter into our collision between two 2D colliders, we can run some code inside this method. So that's when this method actually gets called, whenever we start collision between 2D colliders. Now, the thing that we hit, since we're on the ball script right now, the thing that we hit gets saved into this variable that we created called obj, and it is of type collision 2D. Now this data type right here, collision 2D, allows us a lot of extra things like where did we hit the ball at, and the point of collision, and all things like that that we could use if we wanted to. In our case, we really don't need to. But you can use those. The more important thing is obj. So obj is the object we hit, so whether we hit the paddle or the wall, that object gets referenced and saved into obj so that we can play with it and access it and stuff. And that's just what we're going to do. So we're going to use something called tags in Unity, and we can tag certain objects or items with different tags. And in our case, we're going to tag if we've either hit the right paddle or left paddle. Because that allow us to know which direction we're going to bounce back from. So to get started, we need to use an if statement. So this is our question, right? So we're going to say if obj dot game object, so the game object dot tag, if that is equal to, and then this is our tag, we're going to put in double quotes. I'm just going to use the word right paddle. And then at the end of this here, we've got to do some curly braces. And then what's going to happen when we hit, say, the right paddle? Well, we need to get a y number, and that was that y direction that I was talking about. It's going to be between +1 and -1, depending on if we hit the top or the bottom of the paddle. So I'm going to use what I like to call a temporary variable inside of this method, float y, and that is going to be equal to parentheses transform.position.y. So our position of the ball, and we're going to subtract it from the position of the object we hit, or in our case, it'll be the right paddle, and then close parentheses. So we're going to do all that math first. So we're going to figure out where we are in 3D space compared to the paddle and the ball, and then we're going to divide it by the collider size. So this is the collider.bounds.size y. So we're going to take all of this and divide it. Then the next line, we will use that to figure out our direction. So vector2, another temporary variable inside of this if statement here. Direction is equal to a new vector 2 of, so if we hit the right paddle, we're on the right side of the screen going in the positive direction, so we are moving in the direction of positive. So we're going to go in the negative direction going back to the left. So our x direction is going to be -1. But then our y direction is going to be just the variable y, this variable we just created here. And then we're going to use a normalized function, which just kind of generalizes it, makes it a specific one direction, or puts it in as a number. And then we need to access our velocity method and take it just direction times the speed that we already created up here with the ball. So once we have this done, we need one more because we need the left paddle. So if I copy and paste from curly brace to curly brace, and remember, you got to have everything inside your curly braces and closing and opening curly braces. The only thing then now we need to change is we need to change if we're going to do the right paddle or the left paddle. So I'm going to change right to left. Now, the y variable calculation will be just the same. The only difference is going to be if we hit the left paddle, we're on the left side of the screen and we want to go to the right or move in the positive direction in the x value. So we need to remove the negative. Y normalized still going to be the same, and then the RB velocity, again, still the same. So let's save this. Make sure you don't have any errors. If you do, you can pause again, and especially getting this math correctly and everything capitalization. Then we're going to go pop over to Unity. Now, you might think, oh, let's hit play and let's start using our paddle, right? Well, as you can see, I'm hitting the top or the bottom of the paddle and nothing is happening. Well, it's because the collision is happening, but again, I don't have anything tagged. So remembering what we have tagged, so left paddle, capitalization and spacing matters. Yes, I could have a space in here if I wanted to, or I could have lowercase r and lowercase p for left or right paddle, but I want you to remember exactly how you typed these. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to select a game object. Now, if you come over here, this is where our paddle or our tags happen on the paddle. So we access this game object. So this is the game object part. And we said .tag. If we want to see, is it right paddle or left paddle? Well, if you click this untagged, you get a drop-down menu. And we don't see our tag there, of course, because we need to, at the bottom here, add a tag. And when you add this tag, this inspector pops up where they have tags and on these other sorting layers and things that we don't have to worry about. But the most important thing is our tag. List is empty. So I need to click the plus sign, and I need to click add one for right paddle. I need to add another one for left paddle. And then we're set. So now I can pop back over. I can click on my right paddle. I can click the tag to say right paddle here. And then, of course, my other paddle. Select that and the tag to be left. And then when we hit play, our game should now work. If I click the top, as you can see, it goes to the up. And if I click, he'll still hitting the top, but now see as it goes down. And as you can see, I hit the bottom of the paddle again. And same thing with the left. You should always test both sides, making sure they're hitting the bottom and the top. The math works to where it at least goes down somewhat. So we've got our ball moving correctly. Now, the next step is these walls. When we hit behind the paddle, what should happen? Well, the ball should move to the middle and start again. So I'm going to click here on this last curly brace, and then I'm going to add another if. Well, we're still checking tags, so again I'm saying obj.gameObject.tag. But now we need to figure out what tags do we want. Well, we need one for each wall because we need to know if we hit the right wall or the left wall, and depending on which player basically won the round. So I'm just going to use the same method I did up above, right wall and left wall. We'll start with the right wall first here. So what's going to happen with the right wall? Well, we need to access and move the ball to the middle. So we're going to say transform.position is equal to a new vector 3 of 0, 0, 0. And for now, that would be it. If I would copy this and paste it, and instead of saying right wall, we'll do left wall. Now you might think, okay, what else is there entailed with figuring out which way and direction it needs to go, but you'll find for right now that it works just how we want it to. So we need to click over to Unity here, and we need to figure out we need more tags, right? So we need a left wall and a right wall tag. So I'm going to click one of the walls. I'm going to go in to add some tags here. and I'm going to add right wall again, just like we had before, spelling, capitalization, that all matters. So I'm adding right wall, left wall, clicking this right wall, adding right wall tag, clicking this left wall, clicking this left wall tag. When I hit play and I let the ball go past, you'll notice that it works correctly. Now, if it goes behind there, it does just the same. So why is this happening? Well, if you think about it, the ball with the rigid body is hitting the wall, and it is still actually bouncing off the wall. So you still got that physics being calculated, but we also have code that moves it to the middle. So it moves it to the middle, and then it continues to move in the correct direction, because every time player 1 scores, maybe on the right, and hits the left wall, it needs to hit back at him, and so that he can devise an attack against player 2. So this is working correctly. Now, the only concern here is, usually when you play Pong, you kind of have a breath, or you want to give the player a break or a pause before you start playing again. And this is kind of initial thing that this is just some added functionality here with your game. So let's think, how do we do this? Well, we need to stop the ball, basically, and we need to use some special coding where we can call different function and do functionality and give it kind of a break. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up to this under void start, and instead of calling in void start right away, having rigid body velocity go to the right away on the start of the level, we're going to say void, and we're going to make our own method called start ball. Okay, just like this. Now, this is our first method of where it's not really built into Unity. So we actually need to call this method, or in our case, we're going to use an invoke command, which calls a method after a certain amount of time has passed. I'm going to do a Command X and then Command V to paste this command down here. And instead of just calling start ball like this, if we wanted to, like if we wanted to just call this method right away, what we're going to do instead is use this invoke command. And then inside these parentheses, we invoke, and then we put the name of the method down below, comma, and then how many seconds do we want to wait? In this case, I'm going to say wait 2 seconds. So just to show you how this works, I'm going to hit play. And as you can see, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, a little more than 2, and the ball starts moving. Now, we kind of also want the same thing when we hit the right or left wall. So how can we do that? Well, we could very easily come down here and invoke that command, but the only concern is we need to stop the ball. And then when we stop the ball, what happens is, how do we know if we need to go right or left? Well, we need a couple variables and things to do with for this. So under here, I'm going to first make a private variable of type integer and call it direction, and set it equal to 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to oscillate this variable to either +1 or -1. +1 means go right in the x value. -1 again means go left, just like we were doing kind of with that paddle. So then instead of using this direction and using this vector2.right, we need to switch out some things. So instead of saying vector2.right, we actually need to say new vector2 and just say direction, comma, 0. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to go positive in the right or left and go 0. Okay, and we can call this start method however many times we want and just change direction if we want to go left or right. But we need to actually do that. So we need to come down and do that in our right or left wall. So when we hit the right wall, that means the left player got a score. So that means the ball needs to go to the middle, it needs to stop, or set rb.velocity equal to vector2.0. So stopping it, setting vector2, the movement, 0 and 0 as velocity. And then we need to change our direction and make sure it is set to going left, because the left paddle player scores, we need to move them to the left. So -1. And then we need to do the same thing, so we can copy this code, Command C, hit return, Command V. Yes, we need to reset it to 0, but we want our direction to be going in the +1 because we hit the left wall. That means the right paddle scored, and we want the ball going towards them. Now, in both of these commands, once we stop, we'll say we'll wait a second this time, but we want to invoke, again, the start ball. And we're going to do it, we'll do it 1 second. Okay, because we're already in play. The players are both already playing the game. They're in the zone, per se, to play your game. So we're going to put both of those, invoke. I just copied and pasted again in there, so that now this will be complete to where when I hit play, wait a second, a couple seconds, start the ball. Now, player on the left scores, and you can see it pauses. Now, if the blue player scores here, it pauses and it goes towards him, so that we see our collision is working correctly. Now, that's all that's left to do is to add some score.